welcome to EWTN's ongoing coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families. I'm Catherine Hadro, coming to you from St. Peter's Square, and I'm joined now by Father Thomas Petrie, President of the Dominican House of Studies, and Michael Warsaw, CEO and Chairman of the Board of EWTN. So exciting to all be here together in Rome. We're preparing for Pope Francis to give the Angelus prayer here in St. Peter's Square. And Michael, you're also a consultor to the Vatican's Dicastery for Communications, and you've been involved with the World Meeting of Families before.
Yes, absolutely. So it's great to be with you all here at this wonderful event. So my association with the World Meeting goes back very, very early on in its existence. And I've had the pleasure and privilege over the years to be able to attend many of the world meetings, particularly remember and recall the 2000, the Great Jubilee with Pope St. John Paul, and I was able to be here at the square and at the Mass with him on the altar. And so Philadelphia with Pope Francis, certainly those are some highlights. But our association and our involvement with the World Meeting of Families goes back many, many decades now.
What do you think the most important element of the World Meeting of Families is? What are the takeaways from this week?
Yeah, I think certainly in a world where the family is so much under attack in so many ways and really globally, I think the Church holding this event, bringing people together in such large numbers from around the world to witness to family life, to witness to the blessings, the joys that the family brings, and the importance of the family in our culture. I think that's a profound witness to a world that seems to have lost its way with regard to the family.
Absolutely. And this World Meeting of Families, as we've been reporting throughout the week, is very unique. Typically, it's the largest gathering of Catholic families. This one, it's invitation only, limited to about 2,000 families, which, frankly, I think makes our broadcast all the more critical and all the more important, so that those who cannot be here can still hear the message from Pope Francis, can still take that message to their family as well. And frankly, I've seen EWTN's, strength here with EWTN Espanol, EWTN Europe. I mean, this really is the strength of EWTN coming together globally.
Absolutely. And, I was struck last evening, was out here in Rome, and on either side of me was someone from America who was watching the EWTN live stream in English, and on the other side was someone from Latin America who was actually watching the EWTN live stream in Espanol. And so it just was one of those moments where you really do realize, the breadth and depth of EWTN's coverage.
And reflects the Church, reflects the universality of the Church here as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
And I know, you knew Mother Angelica personally. I never had the honor of meeting her, and family was critical for her. She spoke about the importance of family and not redefining what the family is over and over again.
Right. No, so, Mother Angelica herself personally came from a very broken family, divorced mother who was abandoned by her father, really difficult circumstances. So, I think she truly understood, the value of a family and what that meant, even if she didn't necessarily have that herself. And so when she began EWTN in 1980 and went on the air in 81, she always talked about her EWTN family and really the idea of not just viewers, not just listeners, but really truly building a family around then the United States and ultimately around the world. And we see that today. We still talk about our EWTN family. We see in the emails and the letters, the calls, and the interaction that people really do consider themselves to be part of this global family of EWTN.
Absolutely.
It's been remarkable to us. I mean, just speaking about the depth and the breadth of the journalism of EWTN and the coverage, it's been remarkable to us. And we talked about it last evening, that we've seen virtually no secular media covering this event, and really no other Catholic media. I mean, there's been some news written reports here or there, but there's really not been a lot of coverage, and I wonder why that is.
That's right. I think in my meetings here at the Holy See, and particularly at the Dicastery for Communications, we were talking about the fact that EWTN really has been the only entity that stepped up and provided this level of coverage. I can't necessarily speculate why. It's perhaps in some ways it's a bit of sort of the trailing out of COVID and some of those concerns. But I think what's important is, we looked at this event a very long time ago and said, we need to make a significant commitment. We partnered with the Diocese of Rome as the media partner for the World Meeting of Families, and to continue that commitment that we've made over these many, many years to bringing this event to people who otherwise might not be able to participate.
And of course, there was something significant that happened during this World Meeting of Families, which is on Friday. We had the Dobbs decision on January 24th, and I was really proud to be part of the coverage for that. That we broke in, Catherine broke in, and to be able to provide nearly an hour of analysis of that decision. It was really quite remarkable.
I mean, it is striking that here we are as the church gathered together in Rome, but back home in the United States, Roe v. Wade has been reversed, and this is a culmination of decades of prayer.
Right, absolutely. Well, and from your many years on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly and the reporting and work that you've done over the years. Obviously, for those of us in the pro-life community, this is, 50 years, of prayers, of sacrifice, of suffering, of hard work. And so it's certainly, I think, a moment to rejoice and thank God for this blessing. But I think that we also have to be realistic that, all the work of these last 50 years pales in comparison to the work that begins now, because this has changed the entire landscape of, the abortion issue in America. And what we, I think, in the pro-life community have to do is to, redouble our efforts, and certainly redouble our efforts for, caring for mothers who find themselves in these difficult circumstances. There's no entity that does more for crisis pregnancies than the Catholic Church, and the pro-life community is just remarkable in how it's responded over these years. But we need to be able to do more.
That's exactly it. And I was so grateful for your publisher's note in the National Catholic Register, True Democracy, available now at ncregister.com to go ahead and read. And you also underlined these attacks that Catholics are seeing right now back home in the United States. Can you speak about that? Because that's a reality as well.
Sure. So, I think because America is so divided now, and we've seen this for many years, certainly culminating in so many of the events of the last 2 years in particular. And so we see this anger, this animosity, this rage, this inability to really come together in a civil way and to have differences, but to express them in ways that are civil and appropriate. But certainly we've seen since the unfortunate leak of the draft opinion back in May, we've seen pro-life clinics around the country targeted. We've seen, untold numbers of acts of vandalism at Catholic churches. We see the threats and the escalating rhetoric around that. We saw and we know that part of that rhetoric led someone to seek out and attempt to assassinate a justice of the Supreme Court. I mean, this is a really difficult moment for us, and I think it means that we as Catholics, first of all, need to pray, as we haven't, perhaps prayed before, for peace and calm and sanity in the midst of all of this. But also, I think we have to realize that, this is also a spiritual battle, and so, we should expect attacks, we should expect pushback, and we need to be prepared for that, and we need to commit ourselves even more to the fight that's ahead.
I mean, not to pull back out of fear because of these activities, because of these acts of violence and rage. And in some ways, I don't want to say the word proud, because that's not quite the right word, but Christ promised that we would be persecuted for his name. And we talked yesterday that the Dobbs decision came down on the feast of the Nativity of John the Baptist, who was beheaded, for the marriage issue, but that the first reading of that feast every year for the rest of the foreseeable future, unless the church changes the calendar, Dobbs will always be associated with the feast of the Nativity of John the Baptist in the Catholic Church, and that first reading is from Jeremiah, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you."
Right. All things in God's providence. There's no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah.
So, that's it. Yeah. I can't help but reflect as well on how EWTN has covered the March for Life faithfully for years now. I know when I gone to the march before working at EWTN, EWTN was the only camera I would see there.
Right.
You know, there's been this steadfast presence. Can you speak about why Mother Angelica knew Nellie Gray? This Dobbs ruling also came on Nellie Gray's birthday. Mother Angelica interviewed Nellie Gray. Can you speak about what Mother thought about the importance of the March for Life?
Oh, absolutely. So Mother had a very close relationship with Nellie Gray, the founder of the March for Life.
Yes.
And she appeared on the network many, many times over the years, really, to talk about the march and the importance of the witness of the march.
Yes.
You know, and I think Mother Angelica, from the very beginning of EWTN, you know, EWTN had a incredibly strong commitment on air to the pro-life cause, to the importance of making people aware, of mobilizing people, of working to really, for this day, of striking down Roe v. Wade. You know, that was something that was incredibly important to Mother and a foundational principle of EWTN. And so I'm sure that, you know, Mother Angelica was smiling from heaven on Friday with that news. So, and you know, and we've continued from again, as we said, from those very early days to support the March for Life, to support so many of pro-life causes, and that's expanded and grown, you know, I think globally. You know, one of the things that we've seen over the past few years is that as EWTN has stepped up our coverage of the March for Life in the U.S., we've had other groups reach out to us, whether it's from the California events that then came, but other groups around the world, even from here in Rome or elsewhere, where we actually on our other feeds often air the national marches in many of these countries.
I think also the foresight to launch EWTN Pro-Life Weekly over 5 years ago now, and EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, EWTN News is going to become all the more critical in combating disinformation we're about to see on this issue as well. You know, Michael, you are a prominent Catholic leader, but you're also a husband, you're a father, and now you're a grandfather. Just a few months ago. How old is your granddaughter now?
7 months.
Oh, my goodness.
7 months, so yes.
Can you reflect?
I'm a very young grandfather.
Yes.
Well, I just want to say, remember, the Holy Father says aging is a good thing.
It is. It's a beautiful thing. A new stage.
So what's it like being a new grandfather?
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It's such joy, and you know, she's amazing. Amazing gift of life and her personality. She's just wonderful. So I can pull out my phone and start shouting.
Well, being part of, you know, as the World Meeting of Families, obviously a big focus of the Holy Father, this World Meeting of Families has been how the elders and the elder generations need to pass on to the young. And so now you get to do that to another generation.
Exactly. No, exactly. Jackie and I are so excited to do that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we're so grateful that you joined us for our continuous coverage of the World Meeting of Families. Michael Warsaw, CEO and Chairman of the Board of EWTN. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, it's our honor. And with that, as we continue our coverage, we take a look back now at the highlights from the 10th World Meeting of Families.
Padre di grazia, nessun altro è come te. Tu soltanto puoi guarire le ferite che ho nel mio cuore. Meraviglioso sei, per l'eternità il canto mio sarà. Hai conquistato ogni parte di me, meraviglioso sei.
Il sacramento delle nozze è donato agli sposi affinché, con la loro famiglia, da comunità salvata divengano comunità salvante.
I must ask God for forgiveness daily and keep forgiving so that my family will not be enslaved by the trauma of that night.
La scommessa sull'amore familiare è coraggiosa, ci vuole coraggio per sposarsi.
Jesus is the word to be spoken. Jesus is the truth to be told. Jesus is the way to be walked, the light to be lit, the light to be lit.
What a beautiful week it's been here in Rome, Italy. We're joined now back with Dr. Matthew Benson, the executive editor and Washington, D.C. bureau chief of EWTN News, as we begin to conclude our coverage now, the World Meeting of Families. It's winding down. We're preparing for Pope Francis to pray the Angelus prayer. Yesterday, he did not celebrate the papal mass, but he did give the homily. He was there walking with a cane, and we're preparing to hear him in just a few minutes.
That's right. We noticed that he seemed a little more mobile last night. He was using a cane that he's referenced. He took a spin in the Pope Mobile, which he started back to doing on a more regular basis. Had children in the Pope Mobile, which is probably an event they'll always remember. But that mobility, I think he's making a couple of points in attendance. This is important to him as he sends out the families. He wanted to get that message, that sending out as missionaries to evangelize family life across the world. And then I thought in his homily, we can talk a little bit more about that, I know, but he keeps coming back to this idea of communication within the family, of sanctifying family life, always placing Christ at the heart of the family, the generations. I mean, all of the themes of this pontificate, they always seem to find their way into something he's written or preached.
Yes, absolutely.
It's been really a great week. Looking forward to hearing what the Holy Father has to say for the Angelus. I mean, there are people still streaming into the square. You can see behind us, I think it's going to be a lot of people. It might be as many as that were Mass yesterday. It just seems like they're all lined up against the buildings. We can see it's an exciting day.
Shadows.
Definitely hugging the shadows here in Rome.
Exactly. There's a heat advisory warning here in Rome, and yet people are making their way here. And obviously, the Sunday Angelus is just part of the rhythm of Rome here. But can we talk about the significance of the Angelus prayer?
The Angelus was started probably around the 10th or 11th century. It actually began because, the monks always have certain hours of the day that they pray. And so the Angelus started, first of all, as a night prayer of saying 3 Hail Marys. And then it evolved, and now it's traditionally said at 6 a.m., noon, and at 6 p.m. And it's really, the prayer is an homage, if you will, of the Annunciation. And that's why it's called the Angelus. It's what the angel said unto Mary,
The angel of the Lord declared unto Mary.
Yeah, so it's a way of remembering that is the signal event of all of history, when the Blessed Mother gives her Magnificat, and that's when the incarnation happens. The Nativity is very important, but Christ, the second person of the Trinity, the Logos, assumes the human nature at the Annunciation, not at the Nativity. So that's the single moment that's most important.
One of the things about the Angelus and why everyone should pray it is it's part of, as you note, dividing the day into certain hours of sanctifying your day in as many ways as possible, stopping to pray.
Right.
Ora et laborare. But the other thing, too, is to take those moments, but then to focus on the recognition of the Incarnation. And Mary's fiat, and how each of us, in our own way, need to have a similar fiat to what God wants in our lives.
Absolutely. To weave in prayer throughout the day. And I think, that's for every single person. We've talked about throughout the week the frantic pace of life today, and it becomes all the more important. And the Angelus is a great opportunity to pause and pray and remember the Lord.
Well, so I say to married couples all the time, it may not be possible. In fact, it's likely not going to be possible for you to stop your day and to spend even 30 minutes in prayer. Now, as your children get older, you might be able to do 30 minutes in the morning or in the evening, but to pray and always keep keep your mind attached to God, that can be done in a number of ways. One is just turning your mind to God during the day, but having prayers like this, or just saying a Hail Mary, or saying the St. Michael's prayer, periodically throughout the day. It just keeps you mindful and focused on what is truly important, which is God himself.
Yeah, we were talking about that we have to strive for holiness in our own life, that universal call to holiness. That striving for perfection requires a certain intentionality.
It does.
A desire to do these things. But the church also provides these different tricks and mechanisms. I hate to use the word tricks,
but
right. Little things that are reminders to us of how to do it, that aids in our prayer life, aids in our sacramental life, little things that keep us on the path that we can turn to.
Absolutely. Yesterday, towards the conclusion of the Papal Mass, Pope Francis also gave a mandate of sorts to everyone here gathered for the World Meeting of Families. What was the heart of his message?
The heart of the message was to understand yourself as a family and to live the dynamic of family. That's what Matthew said earlier when we came back from break. It's that to understand Christ is at the center of the family, and then to take that to the world, to take that way of living family to the world, in which there's dialogue between the generations, which there's mutual love and respect and selflessness, and then to be on mission, especially to be on a mission as a family. And he said specifically, when children see their parents living family as mission, it helps them to grow in holiness and sanctification.
And he said, open yourselves to Christ. Be not afraid. I mean, these are echoing Pope St. John Paul II.
Right.
But it is now as important today as it was in the time of John Paul II. Not that many years ago, but it seems like a very long time. How different the world is, even from his passing in 2005 to today, where we are with family. We've had this triumph in Roe v. Wade being overturned, but now we've got, as Michael Warsaw said, a long road ahead of us, and we need the strength to keep on that road. This is where the virtue of fortitude is going to be so important.
That's exactly. There was this reoccurring theme of take courage, and we do need it. We do need that courage. We're hearing that message for a reason. We've been hearing that mandate, that sending the families on forth, that families gathering here for the Angelus prayer supposedly will be given a physical copy of that so they can take that home and remember that with them. Typically at the end of the World Meeting of Families, at the end of the Papal Mass, it's then announced where the next location will be. That's typically also the tradition at World Youth Day. As it comes to an end, they make that announcement, and it's always exciting. This year, a pretty unique announcement. Can you break that down for us?
Well, that's right. So World Meeting of Families typically happens every 3 years.
Right.
It was supposed to have happened last year. The last one was in Dublin. They had to move it here. I mean, it was here. Moved a year because of COVID. We just marked it.
Yes.
3 years from now, we're going to be back here for the Jubilee. And Father, I know you can talk more about that in a second. Then 3 years after that, we're not sure exactly where yet, but 2028 will be the 11th World Meeting of Families. The one in 3 years will not be counted in sort of the official tally of it because it's going to take place within a Jubilee year, so there'll be a Jubilee of families.
The Jubilee in 2025, the Holy Father announced, is going to be focused on pilgrims of hope. But I'm excited about that because I think hope, the Holy Father has been focusing on mercy and in some ways love. And we often think about faith. Hope is in some ways the forgotten theological virtue and hope is very necessary. Our Christian lives are marked by hope. Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI was very strong on hope. He used to say hope is not optimism. An optimist is somebody who looks around at the situation and figures out some genius way of getting yourselves out of it and figuring out what to do. That's not hope. Hope recognizes, I can't get out of this. I can't get out of this. And that sounds like being a pessimist, but it's not, because hope says only Christ can get me out of this. And he's already won. So that's why hope is a distinguishing characteristic of the Christian, is that we recognize the messiness of families, the messiness of our lives, and that we can't always put the pieces of our lives together, but God can. And that's what the theological virtue of hope means.
It isn't false optimism.
It's not a false optimism.
It isn't being a Pollyanna kind of person.
Rose-colored glasses.
That's right.
Glasses. But it's also, in order to have authentic hope, you have to have also a sober, real assessment of the situation in which you find yourself.
Yeah.
I can't help but think, as we're speaking about hope, the hope that pro-life Americans have held on to for nearly 50 years, and again, in God's perfect timing and in his providence, he was right alongside with us all these years, even when it didn't seem possible. The Angelus prayer that we're preparing for will be the third official time we'll see Pope Francis here. We saw him, though, as we've been talking about yesterday. What was the heart of his homily? That was the second message we heard from him here.
No, go ahead.
Well, he focused on one of the themes, obviously, as a homilist should. He was looking at the readings.
Right.
We have Elisha. We have Paul talking about freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Pope Francis was talking in particular about freedom and what it means to be authentically free. He made, I thought, a key point that there is a searching and desire and demand for freedom, but what is it? And today it's a kind of license to do what I want. When authentic freedom, especially in the family, is authentic freedom to communicate with each other, to love one another, but to have the freedom that Christ and the sacraments and love and faith can bring.
It's freedom to follow Christ.
Yeah.
It's freedom to follow Christ ultimately. Freedom from attachment, freedom from selfishness in order to follow Christ, and to have a family in which that's what's being done, and children experience that. They experience that Christ is the center.
Yes.
Well, the other thing, too, was in the reading with Elisha and Elijah, you had this commissioning of the different generations. He talks, there's a phrase in his homily about handing on the testimony, or as it's translated in some places, handing on the baton from one generation to the next. So that it requires communication between the generations, but also trust between the generations.
And that's also been a reoccurring theme. John the Baptist also was this bridge, talked about the need for families to have a bridge between the young and old. Looking back, at this past week, these past few days, what's really stood out to you?
Well, once again, what has stood out to me is just the faithfulness that these families that we've heard from, their faithfulness to Christ, their faithfulness to the church and the church's teaching on marriage, and their absolute insistence that the only way that you can get through the messiness of family is by clinging to Christ, clinging to the sacraments, and clinging. One family literally said, if you do not take a dive into grace and into the doctrine of the church on family, the challenges of your family will eventually prove to be insurmountable. And I think that was a wonderful message. It's something we believe. We didn't hear anything of this week of anybody trying to abandon or diverge from what the church teaches. And on the contrary, it was always the church's teaching is our rock.
This is a conference, the best way I can describe it is that a lot of people would have considered to be almost impossible today.
How so?
Something that Father Petri said, and that we actually talked a little bit about yesterday. A conference in which you have couples bearing their souls, talking about intense, very tragic and difficult circumstances, but then not saying, well, I can't live up to the teachings of the church, so the church has to change her teachings to accommodate me. This was actually an entire conference, pretty much from the start to the end, of conforming ourselves to Christ, of finding authentic freedom in the teachings of the church, not destroying them, not dissenting from them, not finding ways to get around them in the name of false mercy. This was a consistent message throughout this, and it's for families, I think, the most important takeaway in my view is that fidelity to the teachings of the church will save you.
Absolutely. And we're just a few minutes away. Any moment now, Pope Francis will come out to pray the Angelus prayer. The crowd continues to gather here. There was some security here.
Yeah, it's really amazing how many people are here. It's really edifying.
And there's a spirit of joy. There's such a spirit of joy. Even yesterday at the Papal Mass, there were yellow balloons, I saw children running around with different yellow balloons. There is this spirit of joy that really only comes with these big global Catholic Church events.
Right. You see groups over here that are actually singing. I'm hearing competing hymns over here. It's really quite remarkable.
Competing hymns, competing flags, competing groups. But all of them here to see the Holy Father, all of them have come as pilgrims or at very least tourists.
Right.
But they're still drawn here.
Yeah.
All roads in so many ways lead to Rome, as the famous maxim says. It's true.
Yeah.
All roads do lead here. Peter is here, both physically and spiritually.
And with that, we take you to St. Peter's Square for the Angelus prayer.
Now coming to the window. We now await the words of our Holy Father on this 13th Sunday of Ordinary Time.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buongiorno.
Dear brothers and sisters, buongiorno, or good day.
Il Vangelo della liturgia di questa domenica
The Gospel for this Sunday's liturgy tells us about a turning point.
dice così:
This is what it
stavano
says.
compiendosi i giorni
When the
in cui sarebbe
days
stato
drew
elevato
near
in alto,
for him to be taken
Gesù
up,
prese la ferma decisione di mettersi
Jesus
in
made
cammino
the
verso
resolute decision
Gerusalemme.
to set his face to go to
Così
Jerusalem.
Inizia il grande viaggio
And so he
verso la
begins
città santa,
his
che
great
richiede una
journey
speciale
toward the holy
decisione,
city,
perché
which
è l'ultimo.
required a special decision because it was
Discepoli
his
pieni di
last
entusiasmo,
one.
ancora troppo
The
mondano,
disciples,
sognano
filled with
che il Maestro
enthusiasm
vada
because
incontro
they
al
were still
trionfo.
too worldly, dream
Gesù
that the
invece
Master is
sa
going to
che a
meet with
Gerusalemme
triumph.
lo attendono
Instead,
il
Jesus
rifiuto
knows that
e la morte.
rejection and death await him
Sa che dovrà
in
soffrire
Jerusalem.
molto.
He knows he will have to
E
suffer a
ciò
great deal.
esige una ferma decisione.
This is what
Così
demands a
Gesù va
resolute
con passo
decision.
deciso verso
And so
Gerusalemme.
his step becomes decisive going
È la
toward
stessa
Jerusalem.
decisione che noi dobbiamo prendere
This is exactly
se vogliamo
the same
essere
decision
discepoli di
we
Gesù.
must take if we
In
want
che
to be
cosa
disciples of
consiste questa
Jesus.
decisione?
What does this decision
Perché
consist of?
noi dobbiamo essere
Because
discepoli di Gesù
we have to
sul
be
serio,
disciples of serious disciples of
con vera
Jesus,
decisione.
taking a true decision,
Come diceva
not
una vecchietta io conobbe,
as an old
cristiani
lady
all'acqua di
used to
rossa.
say to
No,
me,
no, cristiani decisi.
whitewashed
E per capire questo
disciples.
ci aiuta l'episodio che l'Evangelista Luca
The
racconta
episode
subito
the
dopo.
evangelist Luke narrates after helps us understand of what this decision consists. Having learned that Jesus is headed toward Jerusalem, this city of their adversaries, a village of Samaritans does not welcome him. Outraged, the apostles James and John suggest to Jesus that he should punish those people by raining fire from heaven down on them. Not only does Jesus not accept this proposal, he also rebukes the two brothers. They want to involve Jesus in their desire for revenge, and he will have none of it. The fire that Jesus came to bring on earth is something else. It's the merciful love of the Father. And to make this fire grow, it takes patience, it takes constancy, it takes a penitential spirit.
Giovanni invece si lasciano prendere dall'ira. E questo capita anche a noi.
James and John instead allow themselves to be overcome by anger. This happens to us too when, even when we are doing something good, perhaps even with sacrifice, we find a closed door instead of being welcomed. So we get angry. We even try to involve God himself, threatening heavenly punishments. Jesus instead takes another route, not that of anger, but that of a resolute decision to go forward, which, far from translating into harshness, implies calm, patience, long-suffering, not slackening the least bit in doing good. This way of being does not connote weakness, but on the contrary, a tremendous interior strength. It is easy to allow ourselves to be overcome by anger when faced with opposition. That's natural. What is difficult instead is to master oneself, doing as Jesus did, who, as the Gospel says, went on to another village. This means that when we meet with opposition, we must turn toward doing good elsewhere without recrimination. This way, Jesus helps us to be people who are serene, who are happy with the good accomplished, and who do not seek human approval. And so now let's ask ourselves, what point are we at? What point are we at in the face of opposition, misunderstanding? Do we turn to the Lord? Do we ask him for his steadfastness in doing good? Or do we rather seek confirmation through applause, ending up being bitter and resentful when we don't hear it? How often, consciously or unconsciously, we want applause, the approbation of other people. And we do things for applause. This doesn't work. We must do good as a service and not seek applause. Sometimes we think that our fervor is due to a sense of justice for a cause, but in reality, most of the time, it's nothing other than pride, united with weakness, sensitivity, and impatience. So let's ask Jesus for the strength of being like Him, of following Him with a resolute decision on this path of service, not to be vindictive, not to be intolerant when difficulties present themselves, when we spend ourselves in doing good, and others don't understand this, even when they disqualify us. No, be quiet and continue forward. May the Virgin Mary help us make the resolute decision for Jesus that Jesus did, to remain in love to the end.
Et concepit de Spiritu Sancto.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tui mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostre. Amen.
Ecce ancilla Domini.
Fiat mi secundum verbum tuum.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tui mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostre. Amen.
Et bellum caro factum est.
Et habitavit in nobis.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tui mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostre. Amen.
Ora pro nobis, Santa Dei Genitrix.
Ut digni efficiamur promissionibus Christi.
Grazie a Tua, questo Domine, mentibus nostris infunde, ut angelo annunziante, Christi Fili Tui, incarnazione coniovimus, per passione meius et crucem, a resurrezione gloriam perducamur, per Christum Dominum nostrum.
Amen.
Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto.
Sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto.
Sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto.
Sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Pro fidelibus defuntis, requiem aeternam dona eis Domine.
Et lux perpetua luce Deis.
Requiescant in pace.
Amen.
Sit nomen Domini benedictum.
Ex hoc nunc et usque in saeculum.
Aiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Qui fecit caelum et terram.
Benedicat vos, omnipotens Deus, Pater, Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
Thousands gathered here in St. Peter's Square responding to our Holy Father's discourse and prayer. Dear brothers and sisters, I follow with a lot of preoccupation what's happening in Ecuador. I'm near them, and I encourage all parts to try not to be violent. Only through dialogue can we find, hopefully soon, social peace, with particular attention to the marginalized populations who are poorer, always respecting everyone's rights, and the leaders of the people, the institutions of the people. I'd like to express my nearness to the families and sisters of Sister Luisa del Orto, a little sister of the Gospel of Charles de Foucauld, who was killed yesterday at Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. For 20 years, she used to say that She dedicated herself to children on the streets. I entrust her soul to God, and I pray for the Haitian people, especially for the least, so that they might have a more serene future without misery and without violence. Sister Luisa made her life a gift for others, even to martyrdom. I greet all of you, Romans and pilgrims from Italy and many. And he's greeting the people from Argentina. He saw the flag. He's greeting his fellow citizens. I greet the faithful who are here from Lisbon, the students from an Institute of Notre Dame in France. There they are. And students from somewhere in Austria. I greet the polyphonic choir and a group from Rovigo. I see there are also flags from Ukraine. There in Ukraine, the bombardments continue, which are causing death, destruction, and suffering for the population. Please, let's not forget this people that's afflicted by war. Let's not forget in our hearts nor in our prayers. I wish all of you a good Sunday, and please don't forget to pray for me. Enjoy your meal, and arrivederci. We'll see each other again. Our Holy Father ending his weekly Sunday reflection and Angelus. We'll be back again on Wednesday around 9:30 local time.
That was Pope Francis praying the weekly Angelus prayer and sharing some reflections as well. What was the heart of his message this Sunday?
Well, you know, the gospel today has Jesus making that decision to go to the cross, to go to Jerusalem. He passes through Samaria, and the Samaritans won't receive him because he's going to Jerusalem. James and John get angry. He tells them, he chastises them, and then the gospel tells us he just moves on to the next town. Pope Francis really highlighted that getting angry, especially when we're trying to do good, when we're trying to preach the gospel or do good for someone, and when we're not received, when doors are closed in our face. He said getting angry and being vindictive is a natural human response. The difficult thing and the stronger thing to do is to follow Christ and let grace give us a certain peace and contentment, even against hostility. And I thought just how appropriate that it is for us to hear that even now, after the Dobbs decision, and we're seeing all the rage and expect all the rage that we're going to have to endure for the years to come, to do this with serenity and peace and calm because we trust in Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that phrase, two phrases there of John and James caught up in wrath, which of course is, we connected with the vices.
Yeah.
But then our Lord, what does he do? He goes on to the next village. So he just keeps walking. And I think that's one of the teachings for us today, too. We have to just keep walking, stay on this pilgrimage that with Christ, who is asking us to stay on this. And then that theme of serenity, but then understanding that, as the Holy Father says, it is a way of service. It is a pilgrimage of service.
We are, as Catholics, a reflection of Jesus, and Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And that needs to just reign through and shine through all of us, again, especially as we all go back to our particular countries and unique political situations there. And that idea as well of sending forth on a mission. You know, it's been a really beautiful week here. What a privilege to have been here this past week at the 10th World's Meeting of Families. Really incredible. As we're just reflecting back on it, preparing to wrap up our coverage, what were the highlights?
Well, I would just say I'm very grateful to have been here with the two of you, to have been invited to be here with the two of you, good friends. We've known each other for years, and to be part of the EWTN family for these few days, and to have, I didn't know what to expect, from these talks, and they were really wonderful, really great. That was really a wonderful event, and really gratitude to the Holy See and the Dicastery for Family Life on putting the new evangelization for putting this together. It's really great.
Yeah, and the Vicariate of Rome. Which of course helps to run Rome on behalf of the Holy Father. It's always good to have a Dominican, pretty much any time you're involved with something, but it's been a joy to work with both of you this week. There are images in my head that we take. This wasn't a type of world meeting of family where we go to Dublin or Philadelphia. It's here. And at this particular moment, I think being able to hear the news about Dobbs, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, to have behind us the backdrop of St. Peter's is a great reminder that family life is not political, but at the heart of it has to be Christ.
And again, we've been reflecting since that Dobbs ruling, it came on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart. And this theme that we heard throughout the talks, to be patient in adversity and to have on hope, because God has a plan. God had a plan for Dobbs. God has a plan for each and every single family as well. It's really been incredible, and I have to say, here we are in the summer in Rome. A huge shout out to the EWTN crew here who has been working so hard. We're up here, we get to sit and talk, which has been such an honor, but there are so many crew members who have made this possible, to the EWTN Vatican Bureau as well. It's really been seamless, and again, I don't know if we knew what to expect because this was such a unique world meeting of families, but again, it was edifying. I think we've been saying that as well. It's been so edifying. And for our viewers at home, I hope you've taken away a lot from this as well. And there are so many resources. You can continue to strengthen your family, strengthen your marriage. Make sure to go to EWTN.com. See all the programming that's available. And if you've missed any portion of our coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families, make sure to go to EWTN's YouTube page. You can see everything there. It has been an honor to be here with you as we now conclude EWTN's coverage of the 10th World Meeting of Families.